What's your worst I know this looks bad, but I can explain moment? I was volunteering at a pool for my instructor's certification. The girl I was with was really thirsty and asked if I would mind getting her a Powerade from the vending machine since she couldn't leave her class. She told me where her wallet was so I could get her change. Another staff member walked in while I was taking the money from her wallet. I was the most straight-laced, nervous kid on earth. Lol. I explained. She either believed me or checked with the lifeguard later. But either way, the first girl got her Powerade and the pool hired me later. So the second girl knows I'm not a thief. Mine's a little different. I was at a corporate function and noticed that the president of the company was trying to clean his glasses with a paper napkin. Being the well-prepared person I am, I always keep a microfiber cloth in my pocket. I wear glasses too, and I prefer to actually clean the glasses, not just smudge the oils around. I digress. So I reach into my pocket, grab a cloth, and hand it to him. And he responds with a confused hug. Double quote. Now, at this time I also have a son who is going through potty training. So I tended to keep spare clothes, usually in my backpack, but also in the pockets of my overcoat. I look over, and the president of my company is kind of staring at the unused, thank God, pair of Jake and the Netherland Pirates underwear. Boy's size small. I just handed him. And of course, my immediate response wasn't to laugh. Wasn't to say, oh, those are my kids' backup pair. No. My response was to immediately say those aren't mine. Which was 1, obvious, and 2, not guilty sounding at all. This happened in high school. Shortly after I started dating my first boyfriend. At the time, I would often wear a camisole with a built-in bra layered under a v-neck tee. One day, I was wearing this outfit but wanted to go shopping after school for other shirts. So I brought a regular bra with me to try stuff on. After I got out of the store, I for some reason didn't want to put the bra in my bag, so I put it in the armrest compartment between the front seats of my dad's car. And of course immediately forgot it was there. The next day, my parents were getting ready to go somewhere. They had left the house. But moments later my mom barged back in, demanding to know why I was taking off my clothes in the car. I frantically tried to explain the clothes shopping story, but to this day I'm not sure she bought it. I work at a school portrait company. I retouch thousands of images and sometimes I need to retouch inappropriate things. Well, this high school girl was wearing a see-through shirt and I had to retouch out her nipples. I was in the office by myself as a 20-something-year-old man when a girl walks in and sees me zoomed in on this high school girl's see-through shirt. I can explain. I told her I'm not a creep. I'm just retouching her shirt so you can't see her nipples. It was very awkward, but since she worked as a photographer she completely understood once I explained. I used to work in youth sports photography. This process is actually important. We had someone order a poster-size image of their basketball player. But you could see the outline of his junk. We had to be sure to fix it because taking the calls of upset parents over these issues is just awkward. Oh man. Back in my early 20s. Around mid-2000s when Jackass was all the craze, I went to a house party. A girl there took a big liking to me and kept coming on to me pretty strong. I was in a relationship and kept turning her down. I went into the parents' bedroom to take a call when she came into the room and tried to kiss me. I said no and she started to undress. I told my friend on the other end of the phone what was going on and he just said, well, jump out the window. 20-year-old. Drunk me thought this was a great idea. Just like CKY Jackass. So I opened the window and jumped out onto the grass below. Rolled and walked away unhurt. The next thing I know there is a dull thud and semi-naked crazy chick was laying on the ground. She had jumped out after me. Hit the earth below. Slipped and fallen backwards, hitting her head on the ground. People inside the party heard the noise and came running out the door of the house to find me standing over a semi-conscious, half-naked gyros. As a broke college kid, one of my go-to meals was a $0 69 chili dog from 7-11. Which was 4 blocks from my dorm. I had no car. One winter's night, I bundled up in my heavy coat, gloves, and beanie and went to get Missile 1. So I'm heading back, holding my foil wrapped dinner, and decide to run to get out of the cold faster. Common next thing I know, a cop car screeches to a halt in front of me, and I'm ordered to the ground. Spent the next couple minutes explaining to NJPD why I'm running out of a convenience store. At night, in a ski mask, waving a shiny metal object. TLDR. Suspected assault with a deadly whiner. I was really tall in junior high. One of my best friends at the time was pretty short, and we had a running joke where he would use a little kid voice whenever standing next to me, because I was so much taller. So one day we're playing tag around my church building. Grew up in a conservative house after most people had already left, and my buddy runs into the bathroom and locks himself in a stall. But I was taller than the wall of the stall, so I pressed up against it and looked down at him and said in my best creepy voice, "You can't hide from me." And he used his little kid voice to say, "Oh no. Somebody please help." Double quote. Of course, one of the old church ladies was standing in the doorway behind us, watching the whole thing with horror. Turns out she was there to clean, and caught us at exactly the wrong time. A female friend of mine who is a police officer was on a welfare check and was bit by the property owner's dog. She was about a mile from my house when bit, and because I am an EMT she decided to call me to see if I could inspect where she was bitten and advise if she needed to go to the hospital. She show up at my house and limps into the kitchen telling me the dog bit her just below her left butt cheek on the rear of her upper thigh. I was worried that the bite had broke the skin and she would need to get it bandaged and possibly get a rabies shot. I told her that I would have to take a look at the bite to help her, so she takes off her duty belt and pulls her pants down to around her knees to expose the bite area. It didn't look too bad, but there were 2 spots where the dog's teeth had broke the skin. I told her I would bandage it up so she could make the 20-minute drive to the clinic. I was just about to bandage her leg when my wife walks through the door. There I am with one of our female friends, standing in our kitchen, in her police officer uniform, pants down. She was wearing a thong. I was sitting, so basically her ass was in my face, and my hands on her upper thigh butt. We both had the deer in the headlight stare as we realized how bad this must have looked to my wife. We then both shouted out in unison it was a dog bite. I moved to a new state and only made one friend. We hung out a lot at his place and even worked together. His parents thought it was weird we spent a lot of time together already, but what happened made it so much worse. He wanted to surprise his mom by installing a new radio in her car without her knowing. We were parked outside his house on the curb at night changing the radio when he dropped some tools on the floor of the driver's seat where he's sitting. Me being a nice friend slouched over his lap to pick him up the tools from the car floor from the passenger's seat while he kept working on the radio. Just then his dad pulls up next to him and asks what he's doing. My dumbass, without thinking how bad it looked, lifted my head slightly to see who it was. The look on his dad's face was terrifying. LMAO. I work for a company that deals with varying mentally challenged individuals. Occasionally this job requires me to physically intervene to keep them or others safe. I was driving a girl home from a doctor's appointment once and she decided that she didn't want to go home at that moment and opened the car door when I was on a road going 55. Fortunately she still had her seatbelt on and I was able to pull over and stop the car before she could do so. But she was now attempting to jump into traffic. So I grab her in a bear hug and pull her to the side of the road. At this point I should explain that I'm 6 feet 5 inches and the girl was about 4 minutes and 11 seconds. A good old boy in a lift kit truck pulls over with a gun on his hip demanding what in the FCK I was doing to the girl, who was now screaming rape. I explained I was simply trying to do my job and he threatened to call the cops, which I calmly said, "Please do." Double quote. The girl in question was known to the police and once they arrived on scene and were able to get her safely into the back of a squad car, I was able to provide evidence of my employment which was in my wallet. In what I think was year 3 or 4. Primary school. I was squeezing paint out of a paint bottle. A teacher nearby told me that I'd done enough. The bottle was still in a squeezed shape and I wanted to return its normal shape without getting paint everywhere. So I turned the bottle and squeezed a little more, with it still pointing down. The teacher looked at me and said, "Michael, enough." I replied, "But." She then enforced the common bullshit "don't answer back." Looking back at that now, I realize how much I hate anyone who's made out that a child's response reasoning is completely invalid and worthless. Even in the mildest of cases. It destroys a child's self-confidence. Fucking moronic teacher. Still pissed 12 years later. Was working on a movie shoot in a remote location, so the crew was all put up in a local motel. One evening I'm sitting in my room in front of my laptop gaming. I get an itch down below on the round fellows, as we men occasionally do. So of course I stick my hands down my shorts to scratch. Also of course right at that moment the girl on the crew I've been crushing on opens the door to talk to me about something. She sees me sitting in front of a laptop with my hands down my shorts. And apparently makes the wrong assumption. She lets out a loud gasp and closes the door quickly. For the rest of the shoot she doesn't want to have anything to do with me. Despite me trying to explain. All over a little itch. I forgot to get my son his favorite Christmas toy one year. It was a superhero action figure he really wanted. I had told my wife I had gotten it months ago but had been busy at work so I had forgotten. Christmas Eve came along and I was like, shit, I need to go get this action figure. So I just head to the store. Unbeknownst to me this is the hottest selling toy at the time and the staff literally laughs in my face when I ask them about it. After a full day of looking for the toy, going store to store, and fighting a goddamn mailman, I give up. When I get home I remember my neighbor had gotten his son the same toy and it was right inside his house. I knew they were out so I tried to sneak in and grab it. While this was happening I accidentally kicked a nativity character into the fire. Long story short, the fire alarm went off and my wife and neighbor came barreling inside. Unfortunately it was exactly what it looked like. Damn Turtle Man doll. Late to the party but this actually belongs here. Around 10 years ago I, together with 5 others, was leader on a camp week with around 25 Cub Scouts, boys age 7-11. In the evening. Kids were already to bed. I see what I think is a tick in my pubic area. It was. And there I was. Sitting in a chair. Pants on my ankles with my fellow scout leader sitting on the floor with his head between my legs. Creating a plan to remove the tick. I still refuse to think about what any of the children might have thought. Should they have come out of bed then? Let alone what they could have told their parents. The tick came out fine BTW. Usually it's me on Reddit. Somehow going down a random rabbit hole exploring some article or subreddit that's totally foreign and NSFW with my wife walking in on me reading and browsing and she's usually, "What in the world were you looking at?" And I try to explain but it just comes out weird. I think the last time it happened I was in some place where people posted pics of tattooed assholes or something like that. Probably too late to be seen. But I work for a religious NGO that operates a 24/7 shop. One night after everyone except me and my co-worker had left I noticed some dried coffee on one of the TV monitors on the wall to my left. Without really giving it any second thought, I licked my finger and started to wipe away the coffee stain on the screen. At that exact moment my co-worker asked what on earth I was doing. To my utter humiliation his wife and 2 friends walked in as he asked me what I was doing. I quit focusing on the small stain on the screen to realize that a women's underwear commercial was playing and I was rubbing the breast of the model on the screen. I died in that moment. My face turned so red as I desperately tried to explain the stain on the screen. But they had already decided what I was doing. Most embarrassing thing I've ever done at work. I borrowed my mom's camera once to do a photography job while mine was broken. And accidentally left the memory card in it. A bit later, my mom comes up to me, very awkwardly, and tells me I should get my memory card out of her camera as soon as possible. I thought something seemed off. And when I went to look at the pictures I realized what it was. I had taken up close pictures of my leg while messing around. Because it looked like a butt and I thought it was funny, very mature I know, and never deleted them. She had seen it thinking it was actually pictures of someone's ass. That was awkward to explain. I was on a road trip with my brother-in-law which was leading pretty deep into the night. We drank a few Red Bulls apiece to stay awake for the last stretch of the drive, but after a few hours we were both dying to use a bathroom. We stopped off at a small gas station at around 3 AM and the only person inside other than the checkout bro was a policeman. We had gone so long without peeing we were both limp walking and shimmy shaking ourselves to the bathroom. Just before I raised my head to see the cop I said, "Geez, I drank way too much," to my bro-in-law. I looked drunk because I was trying not to pee myself, half running half limping to the bathroom. Rest assured we both got checked before we pulled out of that gas station. In first grade, 6 years old, I thought it would be a good idea to spell out the numbers along next to the numbers for our spelling test. You know how you number the lined paper from 1-20 or however many words there is? Close bracket. Thing is, I didn't know how to spell all of the numbers. So naturally I whip the little paperback dictionary out from in my desk and use it to spell the numbers 1 through 20. I thought I was pretty smart and my teacher would be impressed. I was an idiot and left the dictionary, closed, on my desk for the duration of the spelling test, and she noticed towards the end of the test that I'd had a dictionary on my desk. She became immediately furious and scolded me for cheating, and I tried to explain through tears that I hadn't cheated and only used it to spell the numbers. I grew up in a conservative religious home where honesty was important and IWA a goody two shows, so being yelled at like this was quite traumatizing for me, and after lots of explanation she believed me. And I didn't lose my recess privileges. I think about this often. I'm almost 25 years old. I got my first DSLR camera and wanted to see how good the low light settings were. It was late evening, so I went to the window of my first floor flat and started taking pictures of the garden below. A few moments later I realized my new neighbor's young, maybe 12 years old, daughter was standing there looking up at me. She then ran indoors yelling, "Someone's taking pictures of me." I fucking shat Maisel. A very awkward introduction followed. "Hi. I live upstairs and I'm not a creep. I'm very nervous person since childhood. I always unintentionally shake my leg, knock the table with my fingers, etc. I don't even realize I do these things usually. So when I was like 10 years old, I was sitting in the toilet, and I get so bored being there, I started to slap my legs, like playing drums on them. So my dad was nearby the toilet all along, and he asked me, "What the hell are you doing there?" So I did answer the truth. I just clap. Back when I think he was just worried about weird sounds. I just realized what it looked like for him that day now. And X200B. I was like 6 months pregnant and I was cleaning up dishes in the living room. And I tripped over a box while bringing them into the kitchen. Glass everywhere. Cut my arms up. My lip is busted open and I definitely needed stitches. My husband drives me to the hospital, and when I get in to see the doctor he asks me like 3 times to tell my story. Instantly. I can tell he thinks somehow my husband did this to me. Now, I have a problem where when I know I shouldn't say something, I just can't help but say it. So the 4th time he asks me what happened, I laugh and say no. He didn't push me down the stairs. The doctor looks nervous and tells my husband he should leave the room while he stitched my lip. Then the doctor gets into a speech about how if I'm being abused, telling people will actually help, etc. I tell him I'm glad he asked me about it, because that's a good thing to do. But honestly I just tripped because I'm clumsy, haha. I was shopping a few years ago with my girlfriend at the time. We went to Victoria's Secret because they had a sale and she wanted some cute underwear and a new swimsuit for a trip we were taking. Anyway, she's in the changing room trying on a swimsuit and I'm standing there with an armload of the things she's already picked out, and her dad, and my former track coach, walks past the store. So I try to shrink back into the corner and hope he didn't see me. But I'm a big guy in a ladies underwear store and I'm sure I stood out pretty well because he comes right up and asks if I'd care to explain what I'm doing there. I'm trying not to get his daughter in trouble, so I start to say they're a gift before realizing that it's really not much better for me to be buying her a lace thong. But I already said they are. And he's giving me a "you're about to die" kind of look, so I panic and say, "Surprisingly comfortable," and immediately wish I could just die on the spot. But thankfully he left before my girlfriend finished trying on her stuff. I got a pair of panties in my Christmas stocking that year. I was case managing a family with multiple and complex issues. I took the grandma out for coffee so I could have some discussion away from the rest of the fam. Gran is half deaf and was telling me about her daughter with meth addiction, whose dog was pregnant to its brother, and she says real loud it's disgusting that he even fucked his sister in the first place, meaning the dog, but she didn't happen to shout that bit out. Whole cafe went quiet like in western movies where a stranger walks into the local pub. I started fiddling with my work lanyard eye tags, hoping that people would notice I wasn't her actual friend. One time in school during the lunch period, my buddy and I were bored, and so we decided to try to learn how to fight grapple. Logical, right? So we looked up some YouTube videos and decided the first thing to learn was how to get out of a full Nelson. It involved one person lifting the other, and I wasn't strong enough to lift the other guy, so it was decided that I would be the one doing the Nelson. We found a secluded hallway and proceeded to try out the move. A teacher walked in right as my friend was flipping me around over his shoulder, and it looked like I was trying to choke him out. The teacher just stood there looking at us confused and just sighed as she went back into her room while I tried to explain what was going on. My now former roomies, who are fundamentalist evangelicals and the parents of one of my best friends, accidentally went through my laundry and found feminine clothes and flipped their shit. They had just kicked their daughter, my friend, out a month earlier because they found out she's in a relationship with her friend Audrey. They were certain that I was either cross-dressing or sleeping around, even though sleeping around made a lot less sense given the living conditions of that house. I told them that they belonged to a girl I would occasionally give rides out to her parents' house about 45 minutes outside of town. She forgot them in the car and was supposed to do her laundry there. She wouldn't have an opportunity to do them again for a week or two. Of course they are mine. And I've been transitioning for about 2 months under their noses. But they're ready to believe anything as long as it's not the awful truth. Freshman year of college. I had made it through my rounds of interviews for a job, and the last thing I needed to do to make it official was to take a drug test. At the time, I was smoking a decent amount of pot and there was no way I would pass. So I bought the fake pee. This particular brand of fake pee came with 2 lids, one of which had a little flip out pour spout. I thought that sounded super handy, just have the bottle taped upside down to my leg, flip the spout out, and pour it into the receptacle. So I'm all set. Fake pee has been microwaved to body temperature. Pour spout lid is on, and it's taped to my leg, with the spout facing down. I run out of my dorm room, down the hall, and into the stairwell. As soon as I enter the stairwell, I feel a slight wetness against my thigh. I look down to see a wet spot growing in my pants and yell out "fuck." The moment I look up from my piss spot, I see a girl at the top of the stairs 1 floor above me, just standing there staring at me, looking shocked. I said nothing and turned back into my hall to take care of my problem. So there is some girl out there who thinks that I suffer from early onset incontinence. My school had uniforms, which included a 3-stroke 4-length skirt for girls. Due to the awkward length, if you bent down wearing it, you were at a risk of standing on the edge with your heels and accidentally pulling it down when you stood up. Because of this, I tended to bend over in it by separating my legs slightly and bending over, barely straightening my knees. I was 13 and walking to science class, and I was holding my science book. I drop it and bend down in my regular fashion to pick it up, and my crush, who'd been walking behind me, accidentally walks right into the back of me and, in shock, threw his hands up and said "whoa," because yeah, probably wasn't anticipating walking right into a girl's ass. So there we stand. Like Robin Thicke and Miley Cyrus' god-awful VMAs performance. Both totally shell-shocked, and our geography teacher, an old timid man, makes eye contact with me, and I think my expression of pure embarrassment just made me look all the more guilty. I went to the club with a couple chicks I met at the laundromat. I got way more trashed than I meant to, and they took me back to their place. They were roommates. There was another dude there when we got there, presumably a third roommate, but I didn't know them well enough to know who he was. We split off to crash for the night, and one of the girls took me back to her room and starts changing with me in there. Naturally, I start shedding some clothes myself. Well, this girl must have been pretty tipsy too, because she lost her balance while changing and fell into her closet, making a very loud crash. My first reaction was to help her up, but within seconds the dude and the other girl roommate came rushing in the room to see me half naked standing over their friend on the floor of her closet, entangled in her own clothes. I immediately realized how bad that must have looked and was like, fuck. My high school boyfriend and I were on extreme watch from his paranoid parents, cause they were certain we were having sex when we actually weren't. One day, we were hanging out in his room, door open and everything, and his pants randomly fell down when he got up to go to the bathroom or something. He was skinny and baggy skater fashion was in. I was sitting on his bed silent laughing while he was standing there embarrassed in his boxes and giggling when his dad barges in before he can pull his pants up like, "What the hell are you kids doing?" like something out of movie, and there is no way he's buying it. I couldn't even blame him. But I swear we didn't lose our virginity for at least a few months after that. I was playing UGR, card game, at my locals, and the kid I am versing is like 10 and knows how to play pretty well. So we are playing, he pulls out a Cyframe Omega, $25 card, at the time. After the match is done and moves into the next round, he suddenly realizes he is missing his other Cyframe Omega, and everyone is pretty much eyeing me. Also, I have only been coming for 4 weeks while he probably have been coming for months. After about 4 minutes the guy beside me is getting annoyed of the delay and asked to check my stuff. I had my own Cyframe in a different sleeve color for another deck I was building. He pulls it out and asks if it's his. Kid says no, and after that awkward match, he tells his mom everything and she calls home to ask her husband if it's there. Turns out it's at home. At an old company I worked at years ago, I shared an office with the owner's son, who had suffered it years earlier and wasn't quite right. Nice kid, but was just a little off from time to time. My office mate had just been prescribed Adderall and comes in with this bottle of pills and asks me if I want one. I tell him no, I'm okay, and he keeps pressing me about how I need to try one of his pills. I explained that my GF had a prescription. Most of my friends also did, and if I ever wanted one, I could just ask them. I wasn't big on pills and we had random drug tests too. So for various reasons, again I declined. He mentions it again a bit later, how I need to try one, and with that, he gets up from his desk, drops a couple of them on my desk and leaves our office. I'm sitting there looking at these pills I don't want and hear him walking down the hall. I grab them, go over to his desk and open up the drawer I saw him put the bottle in. Open the bottle and immediately then, I hear him walking back. In a rush, I spilled the entire bottle of Adderall all over his desk. He comes walking in and I'm standing there holding his empty bottle with pills everywhere. I tried to explain that I didn't want his pills, never wanted his pills, and was only putting them back in his bottle, but I'm pretty sure he never realized I was being honest and thought I was just some pill thief. Long ago a GF was laying in my lap watching a movie. She had a blanket over her and I had been joking around pulling it over her head at scary adult moments. She hooked her feet over the end to stop me from doing that. Of course a scary adult part came up and I was struggling to pull it over her head as she tried to hold it down. Her dad opened the door right as the blanket popped off her feet and covered her head, so it looked like she was giving me an aggressive BJ on the couch. Instead of killing me, he turned right around and walked out. Not as exciting as a lot of these stories, but when I was 11-12 my mom found a charge on the cable account for some weird porn channel. She naturally thought it was me and probably didn't believe me when I swore that it wasn't. And it genuinely wasn't. To this day I have no idea how it got there. My parents are divorced, so no. Not my dad. Why on earth would I buy a subscription to a porn channel, knowing it would come up in the bills, when there was free porn on the internet? My theory is Comcast or AT&T, whichever we had at the time, threw it on there as an extra charge since we had a family plan for multiple TVs. Honestly, would be a genius way to rack up charges because most parents probably wouldn't believe their kids when the kid denied buying it. And so they wouldn't dispute the charge with the cable company and just pay it, chalking up the denial to an embarrassed teenager. The only reason I'm even telling this story is because for the first time in 13 years since it happened, it came to my mind while I was trying to fall asleep. Scumbag braining saying, I bet your mom never believed you about that porn charge. About 2 years ago I was in class and get a random phone call from the girl I was seeing at the time. There's a lot of incoherent rambling, then eventually she just starts yelling, I'm dying. Help. She eventually admits she took a handful of pills. So naturally I call 911 and rush over there to find her half naked in her backyard just screaming. I go out there and carry her inside to wait on the ambulance, but accidentally dropped her in the living room. Then not 30 seconds later in walks her mom and 5-year-old daughter. I'm just standing there like an idiot and say something like, hey, I'm Olmi. Don't worry, I've called an ambulance. They start freaking out. And then her dad shows up and starts freaking out. Meanwhile the girl is still half naked writhing on the ground, growling like Linda Blair from The Exorcist. Like deep guttural noises. It was a pretty weird situation. I had been doing laundry earlier in the day. And I have a couple of daughters. I had picked up a dropped pair of panties while moving laundry from the garage to the girls' rooms and absent-mindedly stuck them in my pocket. Later I stuck my hand in my pocket and pulled out the panties, not remembering if they were dropped on the way to the garage to be washed or on the way back. I gave them a sniff, determined they were clean, and put them back in my pocket to put away later. Then realized what a pervert I'd look like to anyone who had watched me sniff little girl panties I had in my pocket. Fortunately, nobody was looking at me at the time. BTW. This was the cautious sniff of a parent who's cared for and changed diapers for several small children. I didn't bury my face in them. That would be gross. In high school, my friends and I used to go to Rocky Horror every weekend. We would often end up back at my place watching movies all night or whatever. One of my friends used to perform as Rocky. He had changed out of his outfit at some point and somehow his gold lame underwear got left on my couch and pushed between the cushions. My mom found him a few days later and had some questions about why men's gold lame underwear were on our couch. Were they mine? Was I gay? Were they clean? No, and mostly. She still tells that story 30 plus years later. Maybe not the worst, but when I was in high school and old enough to know better, I had this bottle rocket I saved from New Year's Eve. It had been lit but didn't go off. But the fuse was burned down to a 1/4 inch. It was after I was supposed to be in bed. And my parents were chilling in the living room. I didn't have a match or lighter. So my plan was to make it from the gas stove to outside, where I would throw it. Also it was summer, so I was just in tighty whities. Needless to say, all did not go according to plan. I made it halfway to the door before the thing went off. This was the kind with the report. So it went whoosh. Bang. Everyone comes running to see me stunned in the kitchen, in tighty whities, holding a spent bottle rocket. My arm blackened like a cartoon character from the soot. It semi-permanently embedded little bits of something in my forearm. Though it didn't really hurt. Just shocked the hell out of me. My dad assessed the situation, and then starts laughing like hell. I was at work and my cousin said she was in the area and asked if I wanted to have lunch with her and surprise my niece at a park nearby. I said sure and went over. When I got to the park I was walking towards the benches when I saw my niece run in front of me. She hadn't seen me, so I ran up behind her, picked her up, covered her eyes and whispered, "Guess who?" in her ear while I continued walking to where my cousin was seated. It wasn't till I heard a couple gasps and some parents getting up defensively that I realized what it looked like. I work construction, my clothes didn't help. I immediately put her down and she turned around and hugged me, which seemed to put everyone at ease. My cousin was cracking up when I got to the table and still occasionally calls me a part pedo, which leads to more I know this looks, sounds, bad moments to this day. This is a doozy. I was working in a childcare center in my first week when a child decided to climb a chair right next to a small brick wall. In the second it took for me to realize and start reacting, he was falling headfirst into the brick wall. To stop him smashing his head open, I put the only thing that could reach him in time between him and the wall. My foot. Kid hits my foot, falls to the floor, and lucky is now saved from a bad head injury. Then I hear from behind me, "Did you just kick that child?" It was my supervisor. Luckily she saw the whole thing, understood, and helped me write the incident report. And more importantly, the parents understood, laughed, and thanked me. I was traveling throughout Europe while my girlfriend was back in the US. I met some people in Prague and got too drunk, and somehow I had made it back to my hostel for the night. I woke up to my girlfriend FaceTiming me, so I answered and I looked up, apparently really disheveled. Saw the time on my phone and said, "Oh fuck. My bus to Vienna was leaving in 20 minutes and I had to hustle." So I immediately hung up on my girlfriend and started rushing around. She kept trying to call me, but I didn't answer until I got to the bus station. To her this looked like I woke up. So I answered a call from her. Did not want her to see someone in bed with me. Said "oh fuck" and immediately hung up and refused to answer for about 10 minutes. So obviously, she thought I had a girl in my bed and was cheating on her. Took a long time to convince her otherwise. First thing, I tend to laugh uncontrollably depending on the degree of how nervous or uncomfortable I am. One time in high school, I went up to a friend to ask him if I could borrow a book from him, but he said, "Oh, that book wasn't mine. I had previously borrowed it from Jill name. Go ask her." But I wasn't very sure if any name was the girl either, because it was a common name. So I pointed at the girl who either would be the one and asked that Jill name. And she turned and saw me pointing at her, and I couldn't help but chuckle because I knew it looked rude that I was pointing at her while talking to someone. Realizing that from her point of view it looked like I was making fun of her, it made me laugh harder while wanting to die at the same time. I don't know if she even got mad. I was even too afraid then to go up to her to say I was sorry and explain to her why I was pointing and laughing at her. Anyway, yes, she was the girl with the book I was looking for, so I never got the book. My now husband and I were at an improv practice, playing a game called Freeze, where a couple people are in a scene trying to use big gestures and movements throughout it, and when someone standing on the outside of the scene sees a position they like, they call freeze and take the exact position of the person and begin a completely new scene. Anyway, he was in the middle of the scene, pretending to be a cow. Someone in the scene with him was pretending to milk him. He had his back arched and butt out. That's when a group of his old college friends walked in. It didn't look bad. It was just hilarious and embarrassing. I love improv. This was several years ago, when I was still living at home. I was dating this woman and we were at my house, sitting on the couch watching a movie. Her head was in my lap. This is an important detail later. She was prone to migraines and was having one at that moment. She asked me to turn off the lamp on the side table because light sensitivity, and I turned it off. Then she said it was still too bright and asked if I could put a pillow over her head. So we're sitting there still watching the movie. Out comes my dad from the bedroom, who sees his son with his girlfriend who has her head in his lap covered by a pillow. He didn't know what to do until I realized what it looked like and showed him that she totally wasn't giving me a BJ in the living room. One of my friends was in a cycling accident commuting home from class one night and wound up in the ER. She needed someone to make sure her dog, Fox, is taken care of and tells me she left her bedroom window unlocked so I should be able to get in the house. Now Fox is semi-familiar with me, but I still don't like the idea of crawling in a window and facing a pretty big dog unannounced. So I've got the window in the alley cracked and I'm trying to call Fox and let her know that I'm there and coming in. I'm saying stuff like, hey Foxy girl, Foxy lady etc. Meanwhile the upstairs neighbor hears all of this while she is sitting on the toilet and thinks someone is doing some perv peeping Tom stuff looking into windows. Luckily it was all cleared up pretty quickly as we were all college kids that saw each other in and out fairly often. But it almost took a bad turn.